Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Anthony Moreno. On the program, we learn more about celebrations surrounding the 10th anniversary of the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument and hear more about efforts to connect the monument with our local communities. But first, two community members share more about how serving in the Las Cruces Fire Department has become part of a family legacy. Our senior television producer, David Vasquez III, has more on this community connection.
Go! The number one reason I started becoming a firefighter was I started volunteering in Doñana and I liked the team atmosphere. I mean, I try to give back to the community as much as I can. I coach high school softball right now. I don't know, I mean, it's a good thing that we're growing. We're growing as a department. Pretty awesome that we're actually getting some legacies that are following their father's footsteps. So.
I would say at a pretty young age. I can't remember how old I was when my dad got into the department. He tried for quite a while. I think he tried maybe like 4 or 5 times to get in, but once he did get in, that really stuck with me because I got to see the process from the very beginning, from the hiring process to the academy to his full career. And he would come home with these amazing stories, some really sad, some really encouraging. He became really good friends with a lot of his patients. And that's what really made me want to be a firefighter and try to make that change in at least one person's life if I can.
Set, go. I mean, there was sometimes I would miss holidays because I had to explain to them when they were younger. Got to go help people in the city. And I think them growing up with a firefighter father kind of got them. My daughter wants to become a nurse, so she wants to help people. My son, I can't say he's always wanted to be a firefighter, but he actually wanted to be a doctor. So, I mean, he wants to help people. Me and him both got a tattoo that he drew up, and it's about helping people. So I think it had a lot to do with it. And I will say that you can tell they're very proud of what I do. Well, now my son's doing it, so my family's pretty proud of what we do.
I think it was more their passion for serving the community. My dad has always wanted to help people, even when he was offline, you know, being off duty. If he saw someone that was in need, he would be the first one at their service trying to help them. And I hope that I can be like that too now. I try to be that person, but yeah, my parents have always been very community oriented.
It's very prideful, but then the stress levels go up. I mean, every parent always no matter how old your kid gets, they're always going to be your kid. So the stress levels are going to come up. I mean, wherever my son's stationed at, I look at the call he's going to. It's just, I don't know, it's just that protective deal. And I also got to control it because I got to make sure he learns his own way, because that's kind of how I brought him up.
I'm very grateful for my parents. They've been amazing throughout my whole life. I consider them my best friends, to be honest with you, and I always make sure to let them know that I am the person I am today because of them.
Hopefully they can have a pretty successful career and enjoy it, because it's not a job if you enjoy it, and I enjoy my job.
The Organ Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Joining us now in studio to discuss efforts to connect our community to the National Monument is Patrick Nolan, Executive Director with Friends of the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Anthony, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There has to be a lot of excitement around the 10th anniversary of the National Monument.
Yes, absolutely. You know, 10 years is a significant milestone, but it's really also a chance to look back at the effort in the years before this 10-year period to make this happen, and the impacts it's had in our community. So certainly it's an exciting time.
Your organization has a lot of events planned with partners throughout the community.
Absolutely.
Can you share with us a little bit about what's in store?
Yeah, so this year we worked really closely with our local Bureau of Land Management office to coordinate there's an event almost every single day. Sometimes it's just a social media post, but lots of times it's a hike. There's a bike ride with tacos. When this will air tomorrow, it'll be the Public Lands Prom to really celebrate the 10 years as a community. So lots of opportunities to really sort of take in the moment.
That's exciting. A Public Lands Prom. Can
Yes.
you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So Public Lands Prom, it was a joke in our 5-year celebration. So we sort of leaned into it, right? And it's sort of a chance to, reclaim or relive your prom experiences and celebrate the public lands.
I'm not sure how fun that's going to be for some folks to relive, but maybe they have a lot of a chance to enjoy their prom.
Yes, maybe they had a good one, and it's going to refresh those memories. So we'll see.
All right, just kidding there. But I want to talk with you more about the mission of connecting folks to the National Monument. The work you're doing, what are some of the things that you feel can truly make a difference in connecting communities in our region to the National Monument?
I think one thing we really always want to focus on is access, fair and equitable access to our public lands. And that can be done in several ways. I think one way that we've really tried to focus on is access, like if it's blocked through private access or something like that, right? So acquiring lands that will improve access to those areas. The other thing is really looking at trail infrastructure and trail improvements. Visitation has tripled in 10 years, right? So in 2012, is at around 175. It's now at 600,000 folks that visited in 2022. And so that comes with an impact, right? So really making sure that we have the infrastructure to absorb that impact, and so folks have those good experiences.
How do you feel that the infrastructure is right now? Because I know within that whole federal organization that manages our public lands, the monument here,
Yep.
they've shared with us that they're pretty stretched thin.
Yes, absolutely.
So how is the infrastructure?
I think it's better than it would be without a monument designation, right? So with a monument designation comes a staff, and it can vary, right, from 5 to 7 folks that are really dedicated to protecting the resources in that monument boundary. So that's a good resource. And monuments are different than national parks, right? You're not going there and having arrows and signs pointing you to wherever you want to go. It's really more of a choose your own adventure kind of thing. But that being said, having infrastructure at some of our developed places like Aguirre Springs, Dripping Springs, we're working on a trail project with the BLM to make that La Cueva Trail ADA accessible. So it's little things like that. And I think also just information on where to go, trails to find. All of that really still needs to be developed, and I'll say that Visit Las Cruces has done a lot of work on getting that information out to the public too as well.
Working with the city, how key has that been with these events and folks getting to know the monument?
Visit Las Cruces has been an amazing partner, and the city of Las Cruces have been really amazing partners. I think really since day one, the city really saw the benefit of what this monument designation could bring to our community, and have really, quite frankly, really leaned in and really taken advantage. Visit Las Cruces rebranded recently, and it's very monument focused, very monument centered, and really leaning into outdoor recreation, which the state of New Mexico is also really celebrating and supporting with the establishment of the Office of Outdoor Recreation. So there's a lot of resources that are going into this to really diversify our economy and make sure that we have opportunities, economic opportunities, job creation for folks in our community.
You mentioned job creation. I mean, just economic impact in our region. How does the monument play a role in that?
It's created almost 300 jobs, right? Jobs are great. We love jobs. And I think there is only room to make that grow. There's still like an infrastructure that we need to develop around outdoor recreation here in southern New Mexico. And I think the monument's really sort of a center of that effort. So once that really gets hold and more resources start getting put into these areas, that's going to continue to grow. But even without sort of a minimal push or resources, we're still seeing 300. $36 million in tax revenue, specifically from out-of-town visitors, right? So we're bringing folks into our community to sell. Like these places are so special and magical, right? And we had a bike ride, Danger Bird, and we had somebody from Denmark
Wow.
Yeah, right. Isn't that crazy? Right, all the way from Denmark just to ride these trails, and it's unique, and it's such a great story, and we're so lucky to have it.
You mentioned the Danger Bird. Can you share a little bit more about that for our viewers?
Yeah.
Just to understand what it is with
Yep.
this ride.
So Danger Bird is a yearly event. We host that with Monumental Loop along with Visit Las Cruces, and it's 150 riders from all over come and ride the Monumental Loop, which connects all 4 parts of the National Monument. It's a 200-mile course, not for the faint of heart, right? But you can do it at your own pace. You can stop when you want to stop. You can turn back and go home. But it's really it's a really great community event. And it also, I think, the importance too is that it gets folks to other places in the monument. You know, I think we always go to Dripping Springs or Aguirre or Soledad, right? We really focus on the organs, but there's a ton to see out there. And the Monumental Loop sort of helps really shine a light on those other places.
How has mountain biking thrived since the designation of the National Monument?
I think if I was going to point to one outdoor recreation activity that has really grown and thrived, it would be mountain biking. And even as an organization, we've pivoted. We would just do hikes and camping trips, but then we realized that biking, there was such a need for it. So we're getting kids out on bikes. We received support from the Outdoor Equity Fund for a few years now, and that helps support bikes, helmets, and then most importantly, we're working with a group called Southern New Mexico Mountain Bike, and they are trained professionals, right, that know how to teach these skills. I've tried it. I've tried to teach it. I am not the best teacher, so I was like, okay, we need to get somebody that knows how to do this. And they've been really great to work with. We're doing Saturday bike clinics, after-school bike clinics, and if kids don't have a bike, we'll provide one. Sometimes they'll bring their own. We're teaching bike maintenance. It's one of the more exciting things that I think we're doing.
Your organization works with youth a lot. Can you share a little bit more about how you're connecting youth to the monument?
Yeah, in 2020 we launched the Moving Montañas program. And if you remember in 2020, we thought that would only gonna last for a few days, right? So we relaunched in 2021, and it's really centered on equity and access to our public lands and recognizing that there are barriers. Southern New Mexico is a community that struggles with economic insecurity. And so getting a bike or going out for a hike isn't always the first priority, and there's a lot of barriers. So we really try to remove those barriers, get them out there, get them camping, get them hiking, talking about why these places are special and why we protect them. And then through that, we really create this next generation, right? Because somebody once told me, you're never gonna stop protecting this place. Even after a monument designation, we still have work to do to protect these resources. And a lot of that, I think, is really education. And so getting those kids out there really helps generate and build that next generation of stewards.
You mentioned protecting the monument. There's work that comes along with the designation of a national monument.
Yep.
Part of that is a resource management plan. Yes. Can you give us an update on just how that's going?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year, there was scoping comments, right? So the BLM collected comments from the community on really anything that folks felt was important to be reflected into how the resources and the objects within the monument were going to be protected and managed. So out of those comments, we have now 4 draft plans that the public has access to now. You can go to our website, OregonMountainsDesertPeaks.org, or you can search for it on e-planning, and you can find all 4 of those. And the public comment period is open now. And this is really, this is a plan literally 10 years in the making. How we move forward in developing our outdoor recreation economy, how we move forward on developing infrastructure, trails, all of these things is really going to be guided by this document. So it's really critical that the public comment on it and really put their input in there, because it really does have an impact and helps shape that document. And so that is open now, and that will end July 5th is when public comments will end. And then the BLM is hosting a couple of public meetings in early June, June 5th and 6th, I believe. All of this will be on our website too as well. And then a couple of virtual options following that too as well. And this is a chance for the public to learn and talk to the BLM and see the plans and get them presented to them.
Why has it taken so long to really get a resource management plan in place? I mean, it's been about a decade since the designation.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've had a pandemic during that time as well. But what are your thoughts on that and your insight as somebody who is connected to the monument and works with it?
So I was hired 6 years ago as executive director, and when I was hired, 6 years ago, we were talking about how important it was to get this document done. It was really a focus. And the problem was funding. Resource management plans cost a ton of money. And so what we really did is built relationships with our federal delegation to help make sure that they knew how valuable and how important this was. And so those resources were allocated a couple years ago. There was a point, I think, where they were allocated and then taken away under the Trump administration for other purposes, right? So there's been a lot of forward movement back and forth. But once that funding was allocated, the BLM had the resources and they subcontract out most of that work, and that's where we are now. So it's really a resource question because it takes a ton of time and effort and money to get these plans done.
When it comes to protecting our public lands, from your experience, do you think it suits to have federal protection? Is that stronger than having a state protection? I mean, what's the pros and cons?
Yes, I think federal protection is certainly the better option always. And it's the BLM doesn't have a ton of resources, but they will have more resources than a state land office, for example, or state parks or whoever it may be, right? Some of those local management agencies. So the BLM has those resources and they have that expertise. And they also have the connection to get more resources because, connections to DC. And it's also the federal land is there's so much. It's sort of hard to fathom, right? How much land, specifically the BLM, how much they're the largest land management agency in the country by miles, or acres, I should say. And so them having sort of that expertise and that experience in managing these lands, I think, is really helpful.
You mentioned community input. There's been a lot of criticism towards the outdoor industry for not being diverse enough. Do you feel that community input is diverse enough right now?
That's an excellent question, and I think probably not. And I don't know who's commenting, right? We're not seeing the demographic information, but I do know that when we'll just do like a come all event to public lands, it doesn't always reflect the diversity of our community. And so what we really have done is really moved with intentionality to engage those communities directly that aren't always a part of this conversation, right? And make sure that they are at that table and make sure that they have that chance to build those relationships because these outdoor spaces are not just for the folks that have the Patagonia or Patagucci money, right? It's for everybody, right? These are our public lands. And so really making sure that those folks are a part of those conversations is really important, but you have to do it with intentionality.
Tell me about those outreach efforts to communities that may be underserved.
Yeah, I think a lot of it flows through the schools. So we do a ton of work in the schools. We do family hikes, right? And it's really about building those relationships in the community with diverse partners. City of Las Cruces Parks and Rec, just the City of Las Cruces in a general sense, Las Cruces Public Schools, other nonprofit organizations that really focus on that work specifically. It's building that network, and it's also about building this environment that folks feel welcomed, right? And that's really, I think, what it is. I think folks aren't always feeling welcomed in these spaces, and so doing what you can to create welcoming, hospitable, and equitable spaces to talk about public lands is really important.
What are the biggest challenges facing an organization like yours?
Capacity, certainly, and I think because everybody wants to get outside, right? And so there's a balance on sort of how do we promote that access while at the same time protecting those resources. So really living in that sort of that balance is a challenge, and also a challenge is our federal agency doesn't have the resources that they need, and we try to plug those holes where we can. So that can be a challenge certainly, but I think we're also living in an environment currently where folks really have come to value these public lands. And the silver lining, I think, of the pandemic is that people really there was a reinvigoration, a sort of a rediscovery of getting outside. And that's a good thing. But what we now need to do is sort of manage that impact.
With your educational events that you're having, how do you feel that is going, and where would you like to see that in the next 5 years develop to?
I would like to see more of a presence in our public schools, certainly, and I would love to see us expand sort of county-wide, so like really working extensively in the Hatch School District and the Gadsden School District. I think there's a lot of room for growth there, because both of those places neighbor public lands, neighbor the monument, but there's access issues at both of those places, right? So there's a real marriage of all these. Like, if we want to do our programming up there, we really need to figure out how are folks accessing these places safely, in some of the more isolated, harder to get to areas. So that's, I would love to see that. And I would love to see more, obviously, more staff to do these things, right? The more folks that we have to lead these trips, the greater our impact can be.
Yeah, you work with a lot of volunteers as well, is that correct?
Yes. Our big one, we have a docent, our guided hike program, and this was through a grant supported by our local BLM. And they get trained, they pick a subject matter, right? It can be geology, history, botanical, plant life, wildlife. And so they pick an area and they research that and they learn how to present that in an educational way. And we lead these guided hikes, and folks really love it. It's a good chance to really be in community and join with other folks that are interested in the rocks and the biology of all these places and really learn about that. And I think it also creates this, it sort of creates another level of understanding and appreciation of these places.
The state of New Mexico has taken steps to establish the outdoor recreation department. The industry, of course, has seen a boom in the last decade when it comes to the outdoors. How do you feel that this can impact tourism here in our state, and what areas do you see being positively impacted by the outdoor industry and recreation?
I think our whole community can really benefit from outdoor recreation, right? And there's Visit Las Cruces did this survey of what people do after a hike. It's get a burger and a beer. Right, and so it ripples, and it sort of has these impacts in other industries, hotels, restaurants, apparel, gear. Right, you look at what Oregon Mountain Outfitters has done to really celebrate this place and really put us on the map. And I think it's about putting us on the map. And I think the monument was a key part of that. When you're looking at places to explore and visit across the West, you're going to look for national parks and you're going to look for national monuments. And now folks are seeing us and noticing us and seeing all the amazing things that you can do. And I also think like southern New Mexico, like Las Cruces, Doña Ana County is such a unique place, right? The culture, the history, like the intertwining of cultures that we have here is so unique. And you don't find that anywhere else. So it's really about marrying all these sort of draws that we have here in the community. And the monument, like a lot of things, is really central to all of those efforts.
Now, you mentioned, of course, educational events. I know that when you have hikes, you usually go over some hiking education with those who are taking part in that with you. We're getting to a time of year where it's going to get very hot, moving into monsoon season after that. What are some things that you always remind folks before they head out on the trail, especially those who aren't really familiar with the outdoors and the trails in our region?
Yeah, absolutely. Pack more water than you need. Like pack extra water. We always tell folks to check in. Like I still check in with my wife when I'm going out, right? So check in with folks so that they know where you're going if they don't hear from you. Call ahead. There's always folks at the BLM that can answer questions for you around different trails. And also look at like the activities that are allowed in specific areas. There are places you can't take a mountain bike, right? So make sure that you know that before going in and doing your research beforehand. And some of our places that have volunteers like Dripping Springs or Aguirre, talk to those folks.
And it's always helpful to check that weather.
Check the weather, yes.
Yeah, especially during monsoon season.
Yes. It's going to be hot.
Yes, it definitely will be hot here in the coming months. I want to talk about, more goals that you have. You have this exciting event with the prom happening that I'm sure a lot of people in our region are excited about. But what about other events for the rest of the year? Is there something that you're really really geared up and hyped up about?
Yeah, absolutely. For the summer, we do summer camps, recognizing that kids are just home with not much to do. So throughout the entire summer, we offer summer camps that can be themed around, we've been doing climbing camps here at NMSU, actually. And then we take them out into the real world to demonstrate those skills. So we'll have some plant camps, we'll have some camps where folks are connected to professionals that are doing this work. So we've had the BLM come and talk to us. We've had nonprofit leaders come and talk to the youth. So I think the summer programming is something I'm really excited to see. This will be the second year that we've done this and at the scale that we've done. And then I think once it starts to get cooler, we like to sort of get back out there in the September, October months. The Outdoor Economics Conference will be here in Las Cruces in September. So that'll be an opportunity. Again, this is folks coming from all over to really spend time here in southern New Mexico, and we'll use that as an opportunity to really highlight how important this place is.
Okay, we just have about under 30 seconds left with you, but what are your long-term goals for your organization right now?
I want to see how this monument, I want to really make sure that we are managing and tapping into the potential of this monument and really the impacts that can have in our community. And I think what that will look like is going to be really contingent on what the community wants to see. So once that RMP is sort of finalized, I think we're going to build from that, right? And really build towards a vision to make sure that this monument is what it can be.
Patrick Nolan is Executive Director of Friends of the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Newsmakers. As we close the program, we want to remind you that you can always keep updated with the latest news at krwg.org, where you can also listen to our radio program and podcast, KRWG News This Week, which offers a recap of the week's top stories and interviews from the KRWG content team. You can also find KRWG News This Week in the podcast section on Spotify. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.